Since returning to performance running in 2021, Puma has been making some really funky shoes. From the Fast FWD Elite to the Fast R2 and then the Fastroid, Puma has not been afraid to experiment. And this is the latest from the depths of the Puma id. But are these shoes any good? Or is it just a gimmick? It's time to lace up the Puma Fast RB and take it for a run. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kavuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I'm here to talk about the Puma Fast RB. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Puma sent to me for the purpose of review, so I didn't have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their shoe in this video, and no one's gonna get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Fast RB, and let's start with the specs. And this spec list is wild. This is a 58mm stack height shoe with a drop that I'm not sure if it even matters what the drop is on this shoe because the heel doesn't even technically touch the ground. This is an incredibly unusual design that we have up here. We have triple carbon fiber plates, although I guess technically they're not full length carbon fiber plates, so we have triple carbon fiber elements. We've got one carbon fiber plate that goes basically underneath your foot and runs the entire length of the shoe. And then there's two other carbon fiber plates here that are placed in the forefoot that act kind of like a springboard. And the spring that's in the springboard here are these two pods of foam, and all the foam that's in this shoe is Puma's Nitro Elite, the new version of the Nitro Elite, which is made out of that aliphatic TPU that I've been loving in shoes like the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 and the Puma Fast R2. Now, to protect all this foam and carbon fiber plates, we do have a generous helping of Puma grip, both on this forefoot area, and then we've got two little landing pads of rubber that's on the heel of the shoe. Moving to the upper, the weirdness continues. We've got a fully laceless design that uses kind of a knit booty construction where we've got some knit material over on the tongue and around the heel cup. And then there's a textile material that is kind of like the Ultra we saw in Puma's Fast R2. Now, I went with my usual running shoe size for this one, a size 9, and that worked really well for me. But there was a couple of things that I'd like to point out. The toe box is pretty snug, which you'd imagine for something that's going to be a laceless design. They want to make sure that even without the laces, you're still feeling locked in there. But I did feel like the heel cup area and the heel was a little bit on the loose end. It wasn't a problem. It didn't make the shoe feel unstable, but I did kind of notice it, especially in contrast to how snug the forefoot was. And the way that this material flares up at the back of the heel, it digs into your Achilles, so you're going to want to wear some taller socks or this shoe is going to make you bleed your own blood. And when making this shoe, not only did Puma throw out the rule book, they also threw out any regard for keeping a racing shoe lightweight. This shoe is gargantuan. It tipped my scales at 360 grams or a whopping 12.7 ounces. Now that we've talked about what this shoe is like on paper, let's talk about what it's like to actually run in this thing. The Puma Fast RB is an exhilarating and wild ride. It's super bouncy, very fun, and a little bit on the noisy side. These shoes are fast, but in a very narrow window of efforts. And I also find that if you start to get fatigued and get sloppy, the shoe really starts to penalize you. The shoe does have these little two skids of rubber in the back here on the heel, and that's useful when you are getting tired, so that way you're not scraping this foam onto the pavement or whatever surface that you're running on. But it also has the effect of acting almost like a heel brake on a rollerblade, for those of you old enough to remember rollerblades. But if you could stay on the front of the shoe when you're at like marathon effort or getting up into threshold ranges or faster, that's really where the sweet spot of the shoe is, which makes sense. It's a racing shoe. And that's where I feel like the shoe is intended to work. So for me, when I'm hitting it and feeling like I'm getting the most out of the shoe, I feel like I'm landing right on the pads of my feet and I'm starting to compress this large forefoot area of foam. And as my ground contact kind progresses and I'm starting to push off, that's when the rest of the shoe lands back down on the springboard and I start to load the pods that are here in between these two smaller carbon elements. Once that's all loaded and I'm pushing off, that's when it really starts to launch you forward, and it's a really fun and exhilarating feeling that somehow is also kind of stable. Just because this shoe has such a wide landing area, it's much more stable than it looks. And the overall sensation reminds me a lot of a mix of like Alphafly version 1 and Adidas Primex version 1. Things that were just kind of new and innovative and a little bit scary all put together, but also very reassuring once you get to put them on in a mechanistic kind of way. And it's also a feeling that kind of becomes really normal really quickly. Yes, it is a very heavy shoe, and that is its biggest problem, but it seems to work really well with my mechanics, and it's really fun to just put in long threshold reps or long stretches of marathon effort in this shoe. It's almost like you've got like hydraulic little machines running with you underfoot. And for those of you who think that some shoes can be cheater shoes, this is definitely a shoe that you're going to be grumpy about. Now, before we close out the video, let's take a step back and see where the Fast RB fits within the broader Puma lineup. Now, whenever I take a look at a running shoe brand, I always start with the daily trainer, and from Puma, that's going to be the Velocity Nitro 3. And then the racing shoe from Puma that I would recommend is the Puma Fast R2. That's the shoe that I prefer from the racing perspective. Now, you might be saying like, well, what about the Deviate Nitro Elite 3? And this is going to be an either or situation. You're either going to prefer racing in the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which is incredibly light and a lot of fun to run in, or you're gonna run in the Fast R2, which for me, I prefer because it gives me that stronger sense of push off that I really enjoy from a racing shoe. Now, in between these two shoes, for any time you might say you have a workout that you want to go a little bit faster or push a little bit harder than you would want to in your daily trainer, but isn't quite a race effort, that's where I think a shoe like the Deviate Nitro 3, not to be confused with the Nitro Elite 3, but the Deviate Nitro 3 slots in really well right here. This is a session shoe or a racing shoe companion that works really well. It has a lot of racing shoe components to it, but it's also built and tuned a little bit more for durability. And then for those recovery days or those days where you need to be a little bit kinder to yourself, I really like from Puma the Forever Run. There's also the Magnify or the Mag Max shoes that I do have in for testing that pair of shoes. So stay tuned and hit the subscribe button if you want to see my review of that shoe. That should be coming up relatively soon, but this is where I would put the Forever Run or a Recovery Run shoe from Puma. And then the Fast RB can fit kind of in two spots. It can be kind of like your either or. Maybe you want to run in the Fast R2, maybe you want to run in the Fast RB. But just because I'm not sure that I'd really trust this shoe for a marathon, at least at the kinds of marathons that I run, I think that I would put this as the long run shoe. It'd be really fun to take out for those long runs that have marathon effort in them, or for a longer progression run that starts out at a little bit below moderate effort and then ends up a little bit faster than your moderate efforts. That's where I feel like a shoe like this really fits in well. So I'd use it more of as a long run shoe. And this is kind of how I would think that these shoes all fit together within the Puma lineup. Let's now close out the video by talking about the buying guide, and we'll also go over some alternatives that you might want to consider. The Puma Fast RB is a rule-breaking long-distance racer that's great for big workouts and big smiles. And if you're even considering whether to race in this shoe for your next marathon, there isn't technically a rule that even applies to you that would prevent you from using this shoe. But even if you could race in this shoe, I'm not sure that I'd want to race a marathon in it. The weight of this shoe is an issue. The amount that this shoe penalizes you when you're fatigued, like in the later stages of a marathon, I think that's also a really big issue. And at $350, this is a racing shoe that I'm really not going to recommend, except to the nerdiest of running shoe nerds. So let's talk about some of the alternatives that you might want to consider and see where those shoes stack up and how much they cost. I think the shoe that stacks up most closely to the Fast RB is going to be from Adidas, and this is an old shoe that I don't think you're going to be able to get anymore, and that's the original Adidas Prime X. This shoe also had multiple layers of carbon elements, and it used Adidas's Racing Foam Light Strike Pro. It had kind of a separated forefoot from the rear foot. There was this large cutout in the middle, and that made the shoe a little bit unstable, but it made it really easy to bend and put some tension onto those carbon elements so you can get a really nice pop with each push off. This is one of my favorite wild shoes that I've ever run in, and it's very different from the shoe that you can get now on the market. That is the Prime X 2 Strung. Now, I guess in terms of shoes that are available on the market, these would be probably the closest because there are 2 layers of carbon plates in the Prime X2 Strung, and it's still using that Light Strike Pro foam. But the way that they've changed this shoe, they've removed that center cutout and they've widened everything and made it a lot more stable and a lot more runnable for a lot of people. That makes it just a little bit less kind of wild and a little bit less exciting for me. And so while I still really do like this shoe, when it comes to like a really unusual, wild and fun multi-layer carbon running experience, I think I'm definitely going to give the nod to the Fast RB. But if you are interested in the Prime X2 Strung, that's still a very expensive shoe, coming in at $300. And then I think the other shoe that we definitely have to talk about when we're talking about the Fast RB is the shoe that drives a lot of its design language from the Fast RB, and that's also from Puma, the Fast R2. Now, looking at the outsoles of these shoes, you could see that there's a lot of design language that's transferring over. The big differences between the Fast RB and the Fast R2 is that there is a carbon fiber plate and only 1 layer of carbon that connects the heel to the forefoot. It's kind of this floating layer of carbon fiber that is very rigid and very stiff. And it's also got this little underbite that gives you a little bit of extra leverage with each push off of your foot. And most importantly, for those of you who are looking to set an Olympic standard or make an Olympic team, this shoe does come in under 40 millimeters of stack height. And the Puma Fast R2 comes in at $260. It is one of my favorite running shoes that's on the market right now. And for most of you people who are interested in the Fast RB, I'd say take a look at the Fast R2 because that's the shoe that you probably really want. So those are my thoughts on the Puma Fast RB. Unusual and really fun, but kind of niche of a product, which I think everyone knew that going into this video. But if you have any other questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today, feel free to put them in the comments down below. Or better yet, come to the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to talk to you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?